one of the episodes that I really thought was awesome, and that I was like, man, if I ever get to talk to Darin, I'm going to ask him about Lourdes, when you guys were
Mm,
in France and you went to the I think it was his chapel,
mm,
and you saw the X-rays of that man who had the cancer that had totally eroded his hip. My experience over the past few years has allowed me to witness some pretty amazing things that I think would medicine would dismiss as a fluke, or they would call it a medical miracle. So just for context, not everything is deemed a miracle. It has to meet all this criteria, right? It's like all these things, and I think they said that like there was 7,400 submitted for miracles, and only what I think how many 140 something were
yeah.
approved over 100 years, about 100 years, which is still, I think, remarkable. But I was wondering if you could share some of your experience with that and what else you learned.
Well, I think the context of even that part of the show was to start the conversation that water is operating differently than what we thought.
Hmm.
Um, and I've also been on the other side of super science and super scientists and been to water conferences with the smartest people in the world.
Hmm.
Um, so when you start to look at water, you realize that it's working on a quantum level.
Hmm.
It's also working on a chemical level. It's also working on a biological level. So it's demonstrating all of these kind of facets to itself. And we once kind of came to this idea that it's got three phases. It's liquid, it's solid,
Yeah.
and it's vapor. And and then Dr. Joel Pollak's work
Hmm.
destroyed that theory too, because then he realized there's this gel
Right.
phase that when comes up in contact with hydrophilic surfaces, i.e., around cell membranes, that it operates completely differently than any of these other phases, and it
That's right.
actually generates energy by that interaction. So that's literally exchanging protons and electrons and creating energy just by the act of coming up against the surface. So in the Lourdes episode, it was really not to come away with every time someone
Right. Of
touched
course.
the water, but it's really to say, number one, there's a lot going on with
Right.
water. There is this kind of crazy anomaly that even one miracle would be a miracle
Hmm.
in the way that they've set up the criteria. But there's a lot more than that, and I think it's interesting because on the one hand you can look at this linear side of things because the doctor, um, that his job is to
Yeah.
discredit a
That's right.
miracle,
That's right.
right? To use science to prove that this there was some other way that the healing happened other than literally a spontaneous healing from touching or drinking the water. And I love the miracle that they showed
Yeah.
on the episode too, because it was literally this this X-ray of
Yeah.
mush on one side of this person's cancerous
Crazy.
pelvis, right? And the story goes that number one, it's got to stay in remission, and it's got to be
Yeah.
completely. There's no other explanation. They didn't take some super
All these
drug.
criteria, right? It's like I was surprised.
Exactly. And so they take a scientific approach to hearing the miracle and then seeing all the other biological, chemical, environmental, epidemiological, every
Yeah.
direction that they can possibly imagine. It's not just him, it's a committee of credible, peer reviewed
Right,
doctors.
right. It was like 300 for that guy. 300 doctors could not explain.
Exactly.
I mean, and they were like, stamp it. It's a miracle.
And then a minimum of 10 days that it is still healed,
Yeah,
or
10,
excuse me,
10
10
years. 10
years,
years. Yeah.
a minimum of those 10 years. So when you looked at that, that was in real time. We
Yeah.
didn't we didn't look at that ahead of time when we
That was
shot
so
that.
cool.
That was us seeing it for the first time,
Yeah.
and just him pulling out this kind of latest miracle.
Wow.
And the story goes that, you know, this guy didn't even believe that
Wow.
this was true. So you're coming from a person that he was dying and largely pretty close to
Yeah.
death's door. And at that point he was like, well, why not get a bath out of the deal, right?
Yeah.
So he got submerged, and he instantly felt a tingling
Yeah.
that was undeniable. And in
And
that, and then
no
from
pain.
there, obviously his whole pelvis reconstructed itself and the cancer went away.
Yeah.
So
We're going to move on, but like you have to see the before and after X-ray, and then they did another X-ray in 2013, and you see this beautiful hip. I mean, still, it you know, it's just it speaks to how little we understand about ourselves and about our environment.
well, one thing that is true with water, it's a conductor. It transfers and moves information.
Mhm.
It takes out things, right? It takes out toxins from the most basic molecular level, on a cellular level. It's getting rid of things. We do know now that it's influenced by frequency and waves
Mhm.
and emotion, which is also absolutely frequency.
Yep.
So let's not get woo-woo about it. This is real and this is measurable.
That's right.
And so if you think about, you know, when Saint Bernadette got this message from Mother Mary and she started digging, and then this spring
Mhm.
popped up in Lourdes, and this water that has always been flowing ever since then.
Mhm.
And then on top of it, you've got millions of people that come there every year and praying into that space.
All that energy, you know, yeah.
You're right. It's absolute energy
Right.
that people feel.